Welcome to the April 8th, 2025 Auburn, Maine Planning Board meeting. I will start the agenda with item number 1 with roll call from my left.
Ed
Bob
Barrow.
Hayes.
Riley Bergeron.
Paul Jacques.
Bilal Hussein.
Darren Finnegan.
Tim DeRoche.
Maureen Hopkins.
In Stacy LeBlanc's absence, I'll be chairing the meeting, and that leaves a vacancy as a voting member, and I'll be elevating Ed Bearer to a full voting member this evening. Item number 2 on the agenda are the meeting minutes from the March 11th meeting. Does anybody have any amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes. Oh, you have one?
I was just maybe on page 4 of 8. It was just thinking a word was short. Dig down just above the 1:36. They will be suing for the project at the next meeting. I think it's pursuing, just so that we don't think somebody's suing us.
Absolutely, yep. We'll make that
Thank you.
change.
Do we have to approve the amendment before we vote on accepting minutes, or just approve the minutes with the amendment?
You can approve it with the amendment.
Okay, that's what I thought. Any more changes? Okay, I'll take a motion then to accept the minutes with the amended item that Bob mentioned.
Second.
All those in favor? And item number 3, there's a site plan review for the Danville Housing Development. With that, I'll hand it over to staff.
So you, the board last meeting saw the concept plans for the Danville Corner Housing Development, and at that meeting, we discussed whether or not those would be two-family homes, or if they would be single-family attached. And we did go to our attorney, which you would have received the legal memo in your packets. And they would classify as both, but the one-family attached dwelling would mean that they have to go through the plan unit development standards. So the applicant has asked for more time in order to meet all those standards. So we're asking the board tonight to postpone the project to the next meeting.
With that, I'll take a motion to reopen the public hearing.
So moved.
The review of it, yes.
Seconded.
All those in favor? It's open. And now we can postpone. I'll take a motion to postpone it until, I'll take a motion to postpone it.
To a date certain,
A
May
date
13th.
certain, May 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
is-
Oh, we have to hear the motion, all right?
Can we have any
Discussion,
discussion or ask any
discussion,
questions, or-
sure.
I guess I'd be interested going from one review now under a different review, or different standards. What additional standards, what additional reviews are associated to a planned unit development?
The biggest difference would be the creation of a homeowners association or some sort of land lease agreement, some sort of common ownership. We'll need to see how these homes are interacting with the land, essentially, which is the biggest piece that the applicant doesn't have completed yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any more discussion? Okay. Now I'll take a motion to postpone to May 13th.
So moved.
Second.
Will that suffice? Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. And agenda item number 4 is public hearing and site plan review of Brickyard Commons. This application was submitted by JIG Investments. And again, staff, could you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yes. So the Brickyard Commons project is proposing 96-unit apartment complex with 8 3-story multifamily buildings, a private roadway, stormwater infrastructure, parking areas, and associated improvements. It's off of Brickyard Circle, which is off of North Washington Street, within the T-5.1 downtown zoning district in the form-based code. If you were on the planning board in 2022 or following things, you might have seen this project before, but this is a new application. Their approval did expire, so you're looking at this as though it's brand new. Portions of the site are located within the shoreland overlay, and there is approximately, this parcel abuts Taylor Brook. I think one of the biggest things to really note here is that this is located within the general development subdistrict, which is delegated to us from the state that allows, instead of a 75-foot setback from streams and such, in this development district, you're allowed a 25-foot setback, so they're allowed to get closer. And this project already has secured their DEP approvals and their Army Corps of Engineers approvals, and those have not expired expired yet. And I think those are the biggest notes I have, unless you have anything to add.
Your application also noted that there has to be some off-site improvements with this as well, so there will be a left turn lane essentially added on the southbound side of Washington to line right up with Brickyard. It meets the warrants for a left turn out there. So you'll see in Natalie's comments, there's some recommended conditions of approval in there, and one of those relates to when the completion of that left turn needs to be completed. That's all we have for you. Mr. Gatto is here on behalf of the project.
Okay. Before we get Mr. Gatto up, do you guys have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I do. Natalie, could you repeat something for clarity, not just for the board, but also for the general public? From what I understand, you said DEP has approved the project as well as the Army Corps of Engineers, and the waterfront setback is a state-issued allowance, not a city-issued allowance. Is that correct?
So the state allows for certain municipalities to have what they call like a general development district, which allows you to change your setback of 75 foot from certain water bodies in that district that you have to like submit to them and get approved from 75 to 25 or up to. Some municipalities might choose 50 or, you know, whatever. In Auburn, that district includes our form-based code district, our industrial zone, our general business zones. And this project falls within one of those zones. So in that zone, there's a 25-foot shoreland setback versus a 75-foot one that you would find other places in the city.
Thank you. That clarity is helpful.
But just to clarify, the Maine DEP is reviewing it under the Natural Resources Protection Act and other state statutes. It doesn't have anything to do with the municipal zoning and the shoreland zoning.
Yes. They have already been issued, I believe they did a SLOTA for this, so the site law development permit.
Can you say that again, Natalie?
So it's a site law permit or a site location of development
That's
permit.
what words I was looking for.
To Maureen's point, it's two sets of standards there. The shoreland zoning that Natalie's referencing is a local ordinance. The NERPA permit, the 75-foot setback, is a DEP requirement. So two different standards, both applying to natural resources. Yeah.
The SLOTA permit has been issued.
Yes.
Do you know what triggered it? Is it lot coverage or number of units?
It's a lot coverage.
Lot coverage for more than 3 acres?
Yes.
And while I have you, where on the plan do they encroach? Do they encroach? Where, is there any development on this plan that is 25 feet or closer to Taylor Brook?
Nope. Everything is outside of the 25-foot mark.
And are there appropriate setbacks from the wetlands?
And yes, I think there's been minimal disturbance that has been accounted for and approved by the DEP.
Are there any more questions before I invite the developer up? Okay, Mr. Gatto.
Good evening. My name is Mike Gatto, here with Michael Barnes from Mainland Development Consultants. He's a civil engineer that's helping us with the plans. I did want to do a little bit of review of what you just discussed, because there seemed to be some confusion with some of the comments that were received. Can we go to the C1-0? C1.0. Yep. That's a real nice one.
It will load.
What happened?
Stop touching it.
So I wanted to make sure that folks understood, as Natalie has suggested and David had spoken, is that under shoreline zoning, which is locally administered, you have a 25-foot setback from Taylor Brook because of the district, the T 5.1 district that we're in. So you have a 25-foot setback. The project is also subject to the Natural Resource Protection Act, which has a 75-foot setback. Under that act, you can secure waivers to go within 25 feet of the stream. And we have the wetland permits for this project already. They were approved in September of 2022 for us to alter 13,632 square feet of wetland area for this project. We also have the Army Corps permit that was also approved in June of 22. Both permits are still valid for some time in the future. So we have to pay, based on getting those impacts permitted, an impact fee to the state that we'll have to pay to be able to go in and then construct those wetland fills. There are, as I told Natalie and Dave earlier today, that we have no impacts within 25 feet. We actually have 2. There is an outfall. I don't have a pointer. There is an outfall from the culvert up here that goes out to Taylor Brook, and there's an outfall from the stormwater pond up in this area that goes to Taylor Brook. Both of those are permitted from DEP and Army Corps of Engineers and part of our impact fee. This plan, just so that you're aware, this crosshatched area is from one side of the stream, the north side of the stream, across the stream, over to our side of the stream, showing the area that's subject to the NRPA Act. The 25-foot setback is this line that curves in through the site. Yeah. And then the dark dash line is the floodplain, 100-year floodplain. So if you want to go to the next sheet, I think it is. This is the overall project plan, and as you can see that we're proposing impacts in the floodplain and setbacks for the access road. We also have impacts in the 75-foot setback, but not within the 25. foot setback for the retaining wall back here. We can go to the next one. This is a blow-up to show that a little bit clearer. Here's our proposed access road coming in, 25-foot setback. So the retaining wall is just beyond the 25-foot setback. We moved the road over from where the driveway is today. The driveway was approved based on city records in 1986. So there's been a driveway into this site since that time. So we're upgrading that and moving it away from the stream so that we can meet all the wetland requirements. We're also putting retaining walls on both sides of that to minimize the impacts of the wetlands that happen. This is the first phase of the project showing buildings 1 through 4. And if you go to the next plan, this is showing buildings 5 through 8, I'm sorry. And again, 25-foot setback is up here at the top. Floodplain is solid line, and the retaining wall and part of the building is close to that 75 feet. All measurements that were shown on the plan, 25-foot setback and 75-foot setback, are measured from the normal high water line as required by the regulation. So if you want to go to the next one. So this shows the grading, this plan shows the grading and shows the extent of activity that we're proposing next to the buildings and towards the stream. And so, again, we had 25-foot setback here at the road, and we're grading to let this culvert, put the culvert lower according to the new regs, and let the critters go through the culvert, get to the stream, bed that into the dirt. So we got a little bit of impact in here that's within 25 feet. And then up here at this outlet of this pond, there's another impact that goes down to the stream to have the outfall pipe. You got to have stormwater flow downhill. And the only way we could do the elevations work is to go out to the edge of the brook to get those things. Again, those are permitted by Army Corps under their regulations and DEP. If you go to the next one. And this is the retaining wall area again. There's no impact within the flood, no grading within 25 feet, but we are grading, we got permits to do all of that. So again, I wanted to go through those plans to show you that we do meet all of the resource protection rules at NRPA and all of the Army Corps regs. Slaughter permit was actually issued by the city under their delegated authority. You folks have slaughter delegated authority from 3 acres to 7 or 10 now, I think it's gone up. We didn't need a traffic movement permit for this then. We don't need a traffic movement permit for it now. We did, as part of the work that we did to build the road into the site, if you go back one drawing, go up, yeah. We did impact the flood area by about 100 cubic yards because of the road shifting around and the retaining walls we were doing it. And that was considered to be a de minimis change by the DEP and Army Corps when we got the permits. So I think other than that, I have specific, well, I will talk a little bit. Parking. Under your ordinance, we need a minimum of 1.25 spaces per unit or 120 units. We are proposing 193 parking spaces, which gives you 2 spaces per unit because of market. We find that our tenants or our clients are finding that the tenants have more cars and they have guests and they need more than the 1.25 that your minimum requires. We had agreed at the last planning board, and we're offering to do that again, is to build those 193 spaces in 2 phases, with first phase being 168 spaces, and then we'll add the additional spaces if we need them. Okay, so we did come down, and that gave us a parking ratio of 1.75 per unit. We have 16 ADA parking spaces striped, and if we need more, we can obviously add them because we have space to put additional parking. I think David indicated that we have to do off-site improvements on Washington Street for a turn lane from northbound to southbound or directly across from the north end of Brickyard Circle. There's a full set of design plans in your packet for those improvements. We also agreed to build 914 feet of sidewalk along Brickyard Circle as part of the project. I think other than that, I would be happy to try to answer any questions, or Michael can help answer if I can't get them for you.
Okay. Go ahead with questions.
Good evening. I have a few questions for you regarding this project. First off, I was not a member of the planning board for 2022, so these are all fresh questions for me.
Yep.
That information granted, could you verify whether or not the permits that you're speaking of were granted to your previous application, or are they granted to this application?
They're granted for the previous application, but we're proposing to change nothing, so they're still valid. They're valid. DEP is valid for 4 years, 7 years to complete. Army Corps is valid for 3 years with 4 years to complete.
Secondly, staff, you might be able to help answer this. What is linear distance between this project and the safe handling transloading facility?
You have to measure it out exactly.
Reason I ask is not to get out of what we're here for, but that transloading facility transloads some really nasty stuff. And I
Right.
want to be very aware that we're not potentially allowing numbers of people to be subject to something catastrophic happening at that facility. I would like to know the linear distance between this project and safe handling.
I don't know the answer to the distance, so I don't want to give it to you. There is a spur track. This is the same spur track that serves their thing, but I believe their facility is up here.
Yeah, it's important to know. It's important to know anhydrous ammonia,
Yeah,
chlorine, things like that go in there, and
And-
those are potentially lethal.
Yep.
So I think as a planning board, we have a responsibility to check mark boxes that might not necessarily be written in black and white as well.
So are you interested in, like, from potentially where the nearest rail car is?
Where the safe handling border is to their transloading facility.
So their property line. I mean, the property line, they immediately abut each other.
There we go. That's,
they're on
That's
the
my
opposite
point.
side of the tracks,
but
Well, correct. So,
66 feet at least.
yeah, I mean, there are abutting properties, if that's what you're getting at. Where the activity is, it's on the other side of an active. or-
understood. So I asked that was a loaded question. I knew the answer. My real job is rail related. And I can tell you from a safety point of view, I need to be convinced that we're not potentially putting people in harm's way. I guess that's, for me, where I stand.
Didn't you staff teach, or speak with the fire chief and others to talk about that question?
We did. We talked to the chief. The concern I had when I talked to him was whether or not he had any concerns with accessing the site. And he did note that his comment to me was that, given that there are hazardous materials routinely transported through Auburn by both road and rail, they don't consider the proximity of Brickyard to the rail yard to present any greater risk than other buildings adjacent to the railway here in the city. And his point was that they would follow basically standard protocol with respect to any type of site involving contaminants. They acknowledge that there is a lot of nasty things on that property over there. But they have policies and procedures to take those things into consideration, no different than, when it's going across Court Street.
Granted, and I understand that, and I take that into account. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this, but it's for good reason. I like the project. Auburn needs housing. I mean, we're check marking a lot of very clear boxes
Yep.
to a lot of people. From my perspective, with my 20 years railroad experience, I see safe handling right there, and I'm like, "Ee." So that's where I'm coming from, and I just wanted to put that out there for the public and the board, that that's something to consider.
I have a question. On the DEP permit, section 1A, it says portions of the proposed project are located within 25 feet of the brook. And then again in section 2, paragraph 4, it says the proposed project is also located within 25 feet of Taylor Brook. Is that not correct?
That's the two outfall points that I talked to you about. So we got grading down here. to go right to the edge of the- so the grade-
So there is work being done within 25 feet?
What's that?
So there is work being done within 25 feet?
There is work being done for two outfalls, stormwater outfalls, one here and one up here.
Okay, thank you.
Both permitted.
Given my fellow members' concern about the proximity to the safe handling facility, I guess I'd ask staff, since I'm new to the board and not as familiar with your ordinance as everybody else, is there a provision of the ordinance that would allow us to take that into consideration?
No, I mean, we've talked about it as well, because we know that was a concern of some of the neighbors out there. And there isn't anything specific in the ordinance that talks about proximity to locations. I did have a conversation with one neighbor about even, should there be fencing up between the two properties? And there's nothing specific for this project to require fencing. There's some provisions in the ordinance that talk about buffering for, like, to lessen an impact, maybe a commercial development next to a residential development or something like that. But not in the situation where it's residential. To the point where I think if safe handling felt concerned because maybe the site's more visible now or maybe more accessible, becomes their burden potentially to put up a fence or something to protect themselves out there. But no, nothing specific.
So you'd probably have to have something from one of the, like, fire department or something to say, we're not comfortable with this or something for us to be able to.
Well, certainly, if
Use
they
it as a finding.
if they had grave concerns, they would have shared them with us,
Yeah.
and we would have been sharing those with you as far as, there's an NFPA requirement that says these buildings have to be so far away from a site like this, or there needs to be some type of protection zone of something of that. We don't have any recommendations or requirements to do so.
This is not a new issue. It was discussed in 2022 as well. The board passed with it. I understand the concerns of this board are different, and this is a new application, so it's really up to you folks, but it was discussed in 2022 as well. Same issues brought up.
Are there any more?
So, thank you. So you mentioned at the end of your presentation that you're gonna have a new sidewalk being built. Is that gonna be through Brickyard Lane, or would that be a portion of it?
As I understand it, it's along Brickyard Circle. So it would come from the project along Brickyard Circle out to Washington Street South.
If you want to see more of that, we could pull it up on the map if you,
I think it'd be helpful.
okay.
I
yeah.
think it'd be helpful to see, like, physically where.
You got a Google or city image or something? Yeah, the idea was to take the sidewalk along the outside of the circle, Brickyard Circle, all the way up to Washington Street, southbound. I think there's plans in the future for interconnectivity to the inner city, along the rail or along something. So that was the idea.
That's, Mike's right about that. There's plans to continue basically the rail trail from, screwing up the name of the park. What's the park here behind Moulton Park? And continue that across both South and North Washington Street to get over to this property. And then long-term, if there was a great vision, we could somehow get to the neighborhoods of Hotel Road and Poland Road, all that part. But that's part of the reason why the sidewalk is being included in this.
Plus, we have sidewalks along the roads within the development as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
In reading the materials, you're asking for, not necessarily a waiver, but that you not have to construct the left-hand turn lane, at least that you're limited to 25% of the development before you do that. Is there a reason that it's not? Do you plan to do it in conjunction with the initial part of the development, or do you plan to hold off on that?
No, it'll be done because 25% of the units, the idea is to phase buildings 1 through 4, start with 1 and 2, and as soon as 1 is occupied, move to 3. Well, once you occupy 2 of the buildings, 2 buildings, you need that done. So yes, the idea is to do it, it's just not to do it before we start the building at the same time. So we want to do them, while we're constructing the building, we'll construct the off-site improvements.
So that will be built before building 3 is occupied?
Correct. That's the occupancy of just those 2 buildings, or the first 2 buildings. It happens to be building 1 and 2, or 1 and 3, but the idea is to start with buildings 1 and 2, and before those are completely occupied, and we are occupying building 3 or 4, the turn lane would be done.
That was per recommendation of a traffic engineer.
Traffic engineer, yeah, that was something that just came up because the modification of the sidewalk and the off-site improvement plans and stuff all came in December with a modification of the application that was negotiated between the city and the developer. So yeah, we just put a schedule on it so that it would get done.
And how about the sidewalks on Brickyard Circle? Will they be constructed with the initial development?
I don't think we put a time frame on it, did you? I don't think you put a time
We
frame
did
on it.
not.
That's certainly something, and there's no reason not to do it, unless there's a schedule, and I don't know what kind of research you guys get done today, but if there's a schedule to rebuild the road, you'd probably want to do it after the road is rebuilt. But if there is no schedule, then yeah, they would be done with the first phase of the project.
And you can put that as a condition if that's
Yeah, you
something
could add
you'd
that
like
to
to
the
see
condition.
on the, if you'd like to see that as a condition, we can put that there.
We do know that the road is in the cycle for improvements, right?
Yes, but it's not in the next 2 years, so it will be
Okay.
based on,
Yeah, so based on our construction schedule, we would just add that right to the same condition that the turning lane and the sidewalk get constructed, if you guys are comfortable with that.
And we wouldn't want to see the road necessarily improved while there's a bunch of construction going on anyway, because it would just get beat up. So it's not a bad thing that it's on the city's plan, but it's not within the next 2 years out there. But certainly the sidewalk, if we're going to have people living out there, and we know that this off-site has to be done, I think that's, now the suggestion's a good one, if you guys want to include that as a condition.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Mike. Okay, so I guess we're ready for public comment. I'll seek a motion for that.
So moved.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah.
Seconded.
All those in favor? Okay, public comment is open. Please step up to the podium and state your name and where you live. And you have 5 minutes to express your thoughts and ask questions for the board and staff to answer afterward.
Hi, my name is Carol Lane. I live on Urbania Street in Auburn, which is has a direct view of, I guess, what will be the back of these buildings. Right now, it's a treed area, and I walk the neighborhood quite a lot. It's actually the only treed area left. I sent an email around that I hope people got a chance to read. I didn't think I'd be able to be here, but, so thank you for reading that. But I'm gonna try to give, for everyone else here, a little backdrop to my comments, which is that in 2019, what used to be a very treed neighborhood, I didn't even ever see Hammond Lumber or the rail yard. Hammond cut almost all of that buffer zone, which was against the ordinance, and actually they didn't get approval to do it, they just did it. And it had, of course, extreme effects in the neighborhood. Today, when I sit in my living room, I can look out the window and see industrial rail cars, and I can hear them. There's a lot of industrial lighting at night. Everything's louder, everything's uglier, and my neighbors and I now have some increased problems in the neighborhood, which are visual pollution, increased wind damage due to the loss of that tree buffer, because when you cut down all those trees, the remaining trees have nothing to protect them, and one of them fell across the road this winter. Some of my neighbors experienced increased flooding in their basements because of the loss of those roots in the acres and acres of trees. So one of my neighbors on the corner of Albania and Poland has a lot of flooding in their basement now, much increased since that happened. At the time, I made a lot of protestations to the city and to Hammond Lumber, and unfortunately, nothing ever came of it. What Hammond did do was subsequently propose to rezone a residential lot on Poland Road, and when my neighbors and I objected to that based on some of this history, Hammond, last minute, threw in a bunch of wording about replanting trees, as if that was their trade-in for approving that move to make a residential lot into industrial. Thankfully, that zoning change was not approved, and more industrial encroachment on my residential neighborhood was avoided. But those trees have never come back. No one's ever planted trees, no action been taken. So I thought now I could at least take a stand that we hold accountable future developers and landowners before they do further damage to that treed buffer. The only thing left really is the property we're talking about. It's a beautiful natural habitat in my neighborhood that I enjoy, the kids in the neighborhood enjoy. I see eagles flying overhead. I've seen foxes with their kits running into the woods. I noticed that the developer mentioned there would be a passage for animals, but where are the animals going to go, the critters? There will be no trees, there will be no cover for them to go to. As a member of the Auburn Conservation Working Group, I also know that protecting the natural environment is a way of protecting ourselves. As illustrated in the story, and we've got increased problems from what happened. So what problems is this development going to bring? It's not an abstract concept, it's real. And it's in that spirit that I raised the concerns. Running out of time, but I just want to pose some questions for you. Yeah. Why aren't we requiring low-impact development next to the stream and the wetlands? Why aren't we better protecting our natural treed areas like this one? This is acres and acres of old growth trees. Has anyone considered studies on light pollution, sound pollution, and increased winds? The sound pollution from Washington Street onto my neighborhood is going to be tenfold without trees. And we'll have the added sounds from the development, whatever they are, and acres of parking lot. I just hope that you can delay any decisions on this big development project until those questions and concerns have been addressed. You can't undo that damage once it's done to that environment. There's no going back. So I hope you think carefully about those questions. Thank you for your time and your service to Auburn.
Hello, my name is Renee Cody, and I live on Dawes Avenue here in Auburn. I'm going to read from my notes. My husband owns a property at 24 Brickyard Circle. It's a building that houses a natural spring that was used to run a water delivery business for decades. And it's the spring water is currently utilized by the tenant that's in the building. It's been very difficult to get the city, the planning board, or the DEP to take potential damage to this spring natural resource seriously. Although it's stated in the NRPA report that stormwater management isn't normally part of that process, the geology unit recommended a 30-millimeter liner to prevent the downward flow. The developer's response to that was that 30 millimeters is too expensive. It's not feasible, whatever that means. This is a multi-million-dollar project, but they're being allowed to go to a 10-millimeter liner because it's too expensive to comply with the original 30-millimeter recommendation. I think the city would be within its rights to ask for the 30-millimeter liner. It's also mentioned in the NRPA that it would be impossible to determine where any contamination to the spring, if that happened, would come from. The spring water was tested continually while it was in business, and there hasn't been a problem thus far. We continue to test it. If damage occurred during this process, that would certainly point to where the damage was coming from. And I think it's unfair to put us in the position of having to hire an environmental lawyer to protect a valuable natural resource should any damage occur. I'm getting a little cloudy about the $320,000 payment, which way it's going from developer to city, or what's this about? This pertains to the left-hand turn on to Washington Street and the sidewalk on Brickyard Circle. First, I have to ask, why is there a need for a sidewalk there? Connecting the sidewalk to Washington Street is pointless. No one walks there. There's nothing to walk to. And Washington Street is not a safe place to walk. Why tear up lawns and pave, especially when the street, like so many others in Auburn, is in very poor shape at the moment? And why tinker with Washington Street to accommodate 96 market rate rental units, not affordable housing, not single-family homes, but market rate rental units that could potentially even be used for Airbnb, as has been done up at Stable Ridge? Why do that? Why mess with Washington Street? And how does this mesh with the plan we keep hearing about reimagining Washington Street? And because I'm not clear about which way these payments are going, who pays if there's a cost overrun for this left-hand turn or the sidewalk? And then there's light pollution. There's just a growing awareness of the damage to humans, animals, and insects from our overuse of light. And it seems like Auburn just keeps adding more and more lighting everywhere. This project needs to meet lumen limits, and there needs to be conditions about dimming the lights on off-peak hours. I just close by saying that this project was approved quite a while ago, and it sat dormant for many months while the developer tried unsuccessfully to sell it as a permitted parcel. And now it's come back again, and many of our abutter questions have really not been answered. And so I'm just going to ask that this be tabled tonight so that some of the conditions that I brought up could be, and that others will bring up, could be reviewed. There's really no need to hurry here as it's been sitting dormant for so long. So thank you again for your service on the board, and good night.
I'm short, so I had to bring it down. I want everybody to hear me, and I have a loud voice if I get excited, so bear with me, please. My name's Leo Willett, and I live at 102 Bennett Avenue. I gave the City of Auburn an easement to put culvert going through my property because they built, when they put in all the manhole covers and everything, put all the drainage, it goes through my property and it floods. In the back of my property floods. And the reason it floods is because they get too much rain, too much drainage. And a lot of things go through that drainage. Now it's at the point where the walls are caving in, and I walked all the way down to the other culverts. Those are too high. The water's going underneath the culverts, not even through the culverts. I need something done if they're gonna build that project. I need something done over there to take care of that. Like I said, I've been living there 53 years, never asked for any help or anything. But if you're gonna build a big project like that, you gotta do it right. And there's a lot of neighbors, I don't know why, I'm gonna be 500 feet away from it because I can't read that map. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that. But on the other map she showed, I know where my property is. So, and I agree with Timothy, that is highly, I was in the Marine Corps, and I got a disability because I drank some of the Camp Lejeune water, and I got a disability for that. I don't want anybody else to go through with it because I had cancer. And he's right, it's a highly dangerous chemical. So I'm glad you guys listened to me, and thank you. Make a good judgment.
Hi, my name is Steve Cox. I'm the owner of Service Master Fire and Water Restoration. We're at 29 Brickyard Circle. We own that parcel there. I just want to talk about sort of our impact on that road and then this development as well. So I'm not actively in property development. Back when I was getting my MBA, we had 3 criteria, what works. It's got to be profitable, or it certainly should be. It should be good for the resident. Also should be good for the community. And I don't see, you guys have done such a good job with some of the other developments that are happening in Auburn. This doesn't fit with those criteria. It's basically an island, and that's the problem. The problem I have with it is that we're sending trucks in 24/7, 365. Our property's right up over here, and the only way out is here as well, right by here. This is the only entrance and egress to the whole thing. So this gets backed up as well in the morning. If you're adding 193 vehicles here, then have to wait to cross the southbound side, particularly in the rush hour. It's going to be a zoo. It's going to keep backing up. Brickyard's already in terrible shape. And then you're going to have another pile over here as you have to wait to get onto Brickyard. It's a ton of traffic right there in such a confined space. My second issue is that with that number of units, I was a kid, and I know what I would do here. If I had to live here, you can't go on the highway. You can't be in the brook. You probably shouldn't be here, but you know you're going to end up here anyways, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to scoot up here, so you have other businesses 24 Brickyard, or our property right here. We have not just our vehicles coming in and out of there, but also delivery vehicles, commercial vehicles all the time. That sidewalk goes nowhere. There's nowhere that it leads to. It's not, there's no playgrounds. Again, this is not part of the community. This is an island unto itself. The only way in and out are those vehicles. So if there's 20, 40, 50 kids in there, they're not going to stay in there. I wouldn't have stayed in there. I don't think any of you guys would have stayed in there. So they're going to go somewhere, and then no place is safe. So I worry about my own liability, but I worry about the safety of the kids, as well as the impact that the traffic's going to have. If you guys have any questions for me, again, you can reach me. I'm Service Master right there at 29 Circle.
Can you say your name again?
Steve Cox.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rhianna LaRose. I live at 164 Bennett Ave. I did write a letter to have forwarded to the planning board. Hopefully you had a chance to read some of that. Thank you very much. I only get 5 minutes to talk, so I'm going to try to keep everything brief, and I can certainly elaborate if you need more time or more information. I'd like to start backing up with that shoreline ordinance because the state has a minimum of 75. That's 75-foot buffer. That's the state. The NRPA, they did grant them, which is a completely separate thing, with certain speculations in there, allowing them to continue to put a few of these sites on there, including building number 4, which is 62, I think, feet from the shoreline. The other thing is that the 75 feet is supposed to be from the normal high water line, not the middle of the brook. I need some clarification on that because that doesn't sound appropriate. The city has its own ordinances, which used to be 100 feet up until a couple years ago when there was some manipulation to change that to 75. That includes all of the rest of the streams, the brooks, all of that. Now, in that 75, can they encroach on another ordinance with this being now mixed development? Yeah, they can a little bit, as long as the 25-foot vegetative buffer is not disturbed. That's the city ordinances. Now, when we talk about, again, this 75 feet and now it's 25, that is really only applied to the building structures themselves. In the shoreline codes, under 60-991, it specifically talks about retaining walls. That's a whole nother thing. Now, the retaining wall buffer that's up by building number 8 on this corner, just for an example, still does not meet that criteria. That is separate from what buildings are. That is supposed to be located a minimum outside the 100-year flood stage. It's not. And it also requires that they have grass and buffering behind that. And then there's a specific place where it says that there is to be even no decking and patio even behind that wall. So that's a whole different thing that is beyond what the buildings are. Down where the driveway is, another example, a minimum of 75 feet, yes, there's speculation in there. Driveways are driveways and roads are roads. Again, the 75-foot is the building for that zone, but the roads have their own separate thing, and that's 60-998. And that requires 75 feet. But if the planning board can find reason that there's no other way to put a road out onto Washington Street or further down Brickyard Circle, okay, it does say that you guys are allowed to make an exception up to 50 feet. So you still have to maintain 50 feet there. And that's not appropriate. So the shoreline ordinance, there's still major problems with this, but I won't divulge too much time. Now, the safe handling, that is their property line. They are directly abutted to that. I could talk at length about this, but the short and sweet, I've met with safe handling personally. Personally sat down with that general manager, plan ops manager. I'm surprised nobody's here today. They have grave concerns still to this day about that. Their silos are kept in that back section, and they've extended their rail lines, and they will continue to do that up into that line. That's their property line. So right now, they are storing the most hazardous chemicals right against this property. You ask about linear feet? Isn't that an awesome question? I've asked this numerous times. The plan ops manager, again, grave concerns about that. We have repetitively asked at the very least that they put a safety fence from that property to this site. We've asked the developers. Everything is not economically feasible. Well, that's not an excuse. Everybody recognizes there's a hazard there. I have met with the fire department. I have spoken to them personally. Yes, there's nothing they can do because there's nothing in the ordinance. However, they still encourage us to ask for that fencing. That fencing, they agree, there is a potential. Kids can be running around. That's clear line of sight. Play on the rail cars, play in those silos. So that's that. Now, I'd like to also address this lighting thing. You have a Viper micro strike lighting. Yes, it's downward facing, it's fine. But that is rated now from 5 to 80,000 lumens, which is even worse than it was before. There is no set lumens that have been put on there, and I think we need to literally, somebody needs to sit down and say, this is your max. Because from 5 to 80,000 lumens is humongous bright light, way more than almost anywhere else in the city. All these property owners right now have no visual disturbances, no light pollution going on. I think the closest street light is over 1,000 feet away, and that's the corner of Zor and Bennett Ave, to my knowledge. So that's a huge deal. The parking lots, I don't even want to go there. We've talked about why can the developer not make one of these or two of these a two-story parking garage? Remove some of that impervious soil so that there is more open space there, more lawn, more trees that they could save. They need 120 parking spots. That is knowing they're going to have guests. They have 96 units plus guests. That's where the 120 comes from. That's factored in. Now they want 168. We went back and forth. They do not need that right now. They don't. They don't even know how much parking they're going to need. Why can't we do the 120, and then later down the road, if this completely fills in and they can justify then their 168, they can go back to the planning department, request another parking lot. Their intent is 193, he says. I thought it was 196 when I counted. That is way above and beyond. Now you're talking 3+ for each unit. No.
Ma'am.
So, sorry.
I'll just wrap it up. Good time's up.
I want to know what the weight limit is on that bridge. It needs to be repaired. They're going to have excavators crossing this bridge. It can barely handle the salt and sand trucks right now. I want to know what that weight limit is. I've asked that. Brickyard Circle's in disarray. There's potholes everywhere, so that needs to be fixed. We were told that it was going to be fixed.
Ma'am, you're straying a little bit with, I understand the frustration.
Sorry.
It's all right.
5 minutes is not a lot of time.
No.
All right. I just think that at the end of the day, we have brought this up for 3 and 4 years even before this came before Planning Board in 2022, and we still don't have the answers we need. I just think that it would not do anybody in this room justice to make a rash decision, and it could be tabled to next month so that people can get more information on this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. As has been previously reported, this matter was before the board and approved in June of 2022, but at the time of that approval, that was very early on in the process. Old board members may remember that the approval came subject to several additional conditions. I think there were 7 additional reports or approvals that needed to be obtained. The most important of those was the Natural Resources Protection Act report and a document from the DEP. That was received in September of 2022. That document raises a lot of concerns. It's a part of your packet, and I urge you to defer this matter tonight so that you can all read that in detail if you have not already done so, particularly pages 9 through 16. On page 9, the Bureau of Water Quality of DEP noted that developments of this nature can result in an increase in non-point source pollutants such as road salts, heavy metals, petroleum products, nutrients, and sediment. It goes on to state that perhaps this material will be diluted except during periods when the water flow is below baseline. For those of you who are familiar with this area, you know well that there is virtually no flowage in that section of Taylor Brook for several months of the year. It's just a puddle or a series of puddles that go under bridges and culverts, and the water just sits there, and the concentration of these pollutants will be increased. Therefore, in order to prevent such encroachment of pollutants, The DEP recommended the 30-millimeter membrane that has been referred to by Ms. Cody. And the applicant's response to that was it agreed to a 10-millimeter membrane, and it extended the distance of the 10-millimeter proposal a little bit further, but stated, and I'm quoting, that increasing the liner thickness to 30 millimeters would add a significant cost and is not feasible for the applicant. This is on page 10 of the report. In the next paragraph, the DEP caved, and without any technical facts or explanations said, okay, in effect, 10 millimeters is okay. On the next page, page 11, the economic arguments continued. There's a recitation of the history of the applicant's purchase of the property, and initially was going to use it for a self-storage facility, decided that was economically unfeasible. Then he was going to use it for a heavy equipment facility, decided that was economically unfeasible. Consulted with the city staff and decided that perhaps apartment buildings would be feasible. And then proceeded to provide these proposals, these documents which show 8 buildings on the property. And during the course of the discussion with the Department of Environmental Protection, this is recited on page 12, the department asked the applicant to elaborate on why the project footprint couldn't be further reduced by eliminating one or more buildings. The applicant responded that the proposed layout represents the smallest development footprint that is financially viable. Again, purely an economic argument, and the approval was given for these 8 buildings on this very cramped site. Fortunately, this does not need to be the end of this environmental and financial confrontation and an evaluation. The last line of this report from DEP on page 15 states, this approval does not constitute or substitute for any other required state, federal, or local approvals, and goes on to add some other material. Therefore, this body has the ability to either reject this proposal entirely, as others have urged, or to review this report and to add substantial additionally protective environmental protections for this site, which it does not presently contain, and has given way to purely economic desires of the applicant. Thank you.
Are there any more members of the public that would wish to speak about this? Seeing none, I'd like to seek a motion to close public comment.
So moved. Seconded.
All those in favor? Okay, public comment is closed. I'm betting that there's a lot of questions for staff and possibly getting Mr. Gatto back up to answer some questions. So I will let you guys start in.
I'll go. There was actually pretty recently, and several other of the public members mentioned light pollution. I don't know if you could speak to the lighting fixtures that are in place, and also any of the regulations regarding lumens.
Natalie can probably pull that up, but it's probably best to defer that to Mike.
Which one is it? Has your lighting stuff in it? That one has the lumen thing in it too?
And that's in your packet, that sheet, in your packet. Oh, you gotta stop it first.
Okay. Oh, well, I thought you had a plan that had the.
I have a
numbers.
plan, but he was talking about lumens.
I see. I was just.
We're proposing yellow highlighted information. Go to the next page. This whole page right here, this whole page here is crossed out. Goes to 80 lumens. Here's the light we're proposing. No, it's up there. 7,500, and we're proposing 3,000. And then if you go to the map, it's a different, it's 9B. Goes out this one.
Is that here?
Yeah. This is a quick in the map, hard to read right here, but every one of these dots So that's the mapping of the light intensity at the ground so that you can see when you walk in and out of the parking lot. 0.00, 0.00, 0.2 foot candles. 1 is typically emergency.
So can I, just for clarity?
Yeah.
Like a person 100 feet, like on the other side of the brook or something, like on Bennett Avenue or something, could see that there's a light,
Yeah.
but the light is not going to be physically hitting where they are,
Right.
like the ground.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they could see that the site is lit up, like I can see Auburn from Turner. It's lit up, okay?
Yes.
All right, yes, absolutely. But this is the standard that we meet for every lighting plan we do, for every project. Whether it's a retail project or whether it's whatever, you do the foot candles and the electrical engineer says this is what we need for the minimum for a handicapped person. You know, as far as I know, it meets the standards. And we did limit the lights. I agree that the paperwork shows 5,000 to 80,000 lumens, but we are not proposing that. We propose 7,500 and 3,000.
Well, we have Mr. Gatto here. But I have another question you might be able to
Yeah.
help me with. The 30 millimeter versus 10 millimeter liner, is that a full non-starter? Because I'm actually inclined, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, that's to make that a condition. That would make it completely prohibitive to do this project, or?
It's not used typically in stormwater ponds, and I don't know, the argument came up from the people because of the neighbors' concerns about different things. And we don't even need a liner for the pond under the standards. So we agreed to do a 10 milliliter liner. That's what we're proposing to do.
But would it be completely cost prohibitive to make a condition that it be 30 millimeters?
I have no idea standing here tonight whether the client would accept that or not, whether you go forward or not, and you may not care, but I see no need for us to have the liner. The other thing is that there is a spring in the neighborhood, but it's not registered on the state drinking water wells. It's not registered anywhere that I can see, looking at the research. So I know it's there. I've been in the community for many years. I started work here a long time ago, so I know the spring is there. But there isn't an aquifer. They are getting 16 to 20 gallons a minute, so there is a spring there. Not arguing, but it's where it's getting its water from. Could be from Service Master's lot. I don't know. So it's not like an aquifer that you're digging into a artesian well type situation. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions? Yes.
I think that this would be for staff. I wouldn't want to be approving a project if there are in fact some setback issues, and I'm wondering if you can address Ms. LaRose's statements and see whether they do result in any setback concerns. She's correct, Mr. Gatto did point out where the center line of the stream is, but are the setbacks as shown on the plan from the normal high water line? And is the retaining wall location as shown on that plan consistent with section 991 of the shoreland ordinance? And is the road setback consistent with the shoreland zoning provisions?
Okay, so I'll start with the second question about the zoning ordinance. We did verify, we went through our shoreland zoning, and the 25-foot general development district does cover the driveways and the other things that it doesn't specifically say in the driveway section, but it does say it in the ordinance, so it's applicable. Maybe could be worded a little better, but not at the moment, is it? And okay, I answered one of the questions.
Yeah, I think you said normal high water line. The plan's representing that it's being measured from the normal high water line. I don't see on the plan where it's being measured either from the center or the opposite side. I think it is, if the plan is accurate, it appears to be measured from the right spot to establish that 25-foot setback or the 75-foot setback. Retaining wall, there's provisions in there about the retaining wall. Mrs. LaRose is right. I mean, it's in there, but again, because it's in a general development area, you have these different standards that apply for properties that are in certain zoning districts, including this. It's general development district reduces setbacks, allows impervious ratios to go up to 70%. It's for better or for worse, when you're in that zoning district, you can do a heck of a lot more than you would otherwise be able to do in a typical shoreline zoned area. So given the zoning changes that happened, and correct me, but it was zoned industrial before too, I think. So even prior to whatever changes the council made, whenever that was, potentially a property owner could have come in here and made similar arguments about a 25-foot setback, assuming they got all the DEP permits as well for development out there. So a road, retaining wall, and normal high water line.
The sidewalk concerns, this is just standard for what we ask developers to do now to provide for future connectivity. It does seem like a sidewalk to nowhere, and a few of those have been built in Auburn recently, or we approved them to be built anyway. But as Mr. Hediger alluded to before, there are plans to be able to connect over Washington Street, also back into the Bennett Avenue neighborhood, to get into Poland Road and Hotel Road eventually, in there. And then the whole Washington Street area, to be able to get access, pedestrian and bicycle use eventually. So this is so the city doesn't have to pay to do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is planning ahead.
Yeah.
I would totally agree. Washington Street is not a pedestrian-friendly road by any means. I mean, that's part of the reason why a left turn lane has to be done out there too. It's not even vehicular-friendly at this point for left turns out there. But it's planning ahead. I mean, they're putting units out there. Whether it's children or adults, to create a better safety situation out there in the future to provide that connectivity. There is a Washington Street study. That study, they just had a public virtual meeting last week about it. A lot of that is, it could happen in 5 years, it could happen in 25 years, it could never happen. The thoughts about making southbound basically a limited access highway, and the northbound side basically more like a pedestrian-friendly, calmer traffic pattern. That's what's being discussed there. And how it impacts this intersection certainly is going to be taken into consideration at that point. But if you could provide a safer route for residents here to be able to walk or bike to get to downtown Auburn or Lewiston, a sidewalk's the first step in doing that. So if we can get a developer to do that instead of the city doing it, it's not a bad thing.
And the $320,000.
That was an estimate, as I understand, that was arrived at between the developer the last time and Public Services. My understanding is they still think that's a realistic number for purposes of building it out. If it costs more or less, that will be determined when it goes out to bid.
So that's the developer giving money to build it.
My understanding at this point is the developer's responsible to build that out there.
Oh, okay.
I know in the past the city was looking to participate in something. I don't know how that's going to work, given that this project expired and it's coming up for approval here again tonight. So those discussions might happen again. I'm not sure.
So there's not like money being transferred. It's just an estimate as to how much it would cost
Correct.
to do that.
Correct. Yep.
Sure.
Regardless of the cost, it's on the developer's nickel.
As of right now, it is correct. Originally, there was talk about the city doing it. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. Maybe they'll have to approach the council if they want the city to pay for it.
There was a concern about the weight limit on the bridge going into that.
We checked with the engineering department today, and they have no concerns about that bridge.
And did staff talk with the safe handling ownership? It sounds like they also would be inclined or prefer having a fence along the property line. Or that's what I heard from the public, so I didn't know if you guys had spoken to them.
No, no one's reached out to us, and we haven't reached out to them.
Other than they were, as an abutter, they got notice of this proceeding.
Everybody within
500 feet.
And they're within 0. And the access road, I think Mr. Gatto said it's an existing road into that property already.
There is an existing driveway
A
that was
driveway, yeah.
documented as far back as the 80s, that they are slightly moving to get a little bit further away from the brook.
To neighbor's point, it's barely a road. If anybody's driven by that site out there, I mean, it was
Right.
built 30 years ago, so it's got a bunch of trees and, shrubs growing up in it type thing. But there was access permitted back 87,
86.
Okay.
86, excuse me.
And is it appropriate for us to ask for the developer to put up fencing? Because there's a lot of, a couple of members have suggested some safety concerns with people straying, residents straying onto the other property. I know that's not conventional, but.
It's not a requirement of the code, but I don't know that you couldn't, again, you may want to ask, you can ask the applicant what their thoughts are at the same time. You could place that as a condition potentially. Whether or not, I don't know what specifics you folks are looking for necessarily. It's a 3-foot, 6-foot, solid fence, chain link fence. What is it that the concern is, or what's the goal that's trying to be accomplished? Certainly, if there is, we want that shown on the plan so we can make sure that, upon a certificate of occupancy, certain site improvements like the parking, drainage, things like that, landscaping, we want to make sure any fencing is installed as well.
Are there any more questions that the board would like to get answered?
It's not a question
Or-
per se, but I do wonder if the planning board with any regularity conducts site walks. I know we haven't since I've been on the board, but in light of a lot of the questions that came up tonight, it seems like it might be beneficial for us to have a site walk and to actually view the site and the proposed conditions.
If we do a site walk, which that probably wouldn't be a bad idea at all. It would be something that we would have to have the staff, the applicant, and the notice to the public so the public could attend. And so it'd be something we'd have to obviously set up and postpone this to probably do a date not certain unless we can set that up today. But I don't think that's a bad idea.
And I'll chime in here and echo the same support for walk on site. I guess I do have further concerns. I guess more as a statement, zoning, one purpose of zoning is try to separate uses that don't necessarily go together. And this is a perfect example. Here we have a major residential use proposed right next to a very industrial site that's handling hazardous materials. And in no buffer. So that is a real concern. And I guess with all the materials that we received earlier and materials we've received tonight, I guess I'm uncomfortable moving forward tonight. And I think the idea of postponing maybe for a walkthrough and serious consideration of a residential right next to a real industrial site, real concern. And I guess I'd raise the question, even now, are there any warning alarms or whatever measuring air quality on that industrial site. So if there is a leak, that there's an immediate recognition and, response.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not a question, more like a comment for
Sure.
the board. I know there was a point about like flooding that was brought up by the public, and the idea of having that, justification for the maximum amount that that the developer required for parking might be another, thought that we could do, where we allow them a certain amount, see how it, fills up, and if there's just justification for the need for that 190, or I think the number was around 160 to 190 parking spaces, we can, allow that for them, because, once we develop over, once you develop and build parking, you're gonna lose grass, trees, things that will, absorb the water that can lessen the need for flooding. So that's just a thought for that.
Mr. Gatto, I believe, addressed there wasn't a traffic study needed, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, they did a traffic study. They didn't require a traffic movement permit.
Oh, moving.
They were
permit.
under the
Okay,
threshold.
Yes, yep, sorry. I misheard.
I'll only chime in that I would certainly be in favor of doing a site visit. I'm new to the board and new to this application. And I also will say that it seems to me the die is cast, though. We have a residential zone up against an industrial zone. At least you can say is it's not a single-family development proposal, it's multifamily, but it seems to me that those are the cards that we've been dealt. And with respect to the parking, I do agree with you that I would like to limit parking to what the ordinance requires, but I'm not so sure we can do that any more so than we can insist that somebody can't be further set back with their building than the ordinance allows as a minimum. So I would perhaps ask if staff could look into that question for us, whether we do have the inherent authority to do that.
We've looked into it already, and we don't establish any sort of parking maximums, so there's nothing saying that a developer, as long as they're still meeting their impervious, can't keep building parking.
There are communities with ordinances that do exactly what you're talking about. This ordinance doesn't. They could actually increase the impervious even more out there if they wanted to, because the zoning allows for it out there. So that might be something that the board or the council wants to consider, in the future, if this continues to be a concern about, excessive parking or more impervious area that might otherwise be required.
That might be low-hanging fruit, though, with a developer who sees that a board might have concerns that maybe they could see their way to reduce the number of parking spaces.
Sure. Also, so this would be, I've been on the board for a while, and this would be, we learned when I first joined the board that you're not supposed to do a site walk by yourself for those reasons where you have to have the staff and public available. How long of a process would setting one of those up be? It would be something that could be done before next month, or would it be something because it would require public notice that we'd have to push to the following meeting?
Well, we'd have the neighborhood meeting, and then we would have another meeting in here for you
Yeah.
folks to act upon.
Okay, that was what I mean, is could that be done with a proper notice, be done between now and May, so that we could postpone it to a date certain instead of a date?
I'd say realistically, it's probably a 14-day, like a notice to abutters would need to go out 14 days prior to the meeting.
To the sidewalk?
Yes,
Potential
sorry,
sidewalk.
prior to the sidewalk walk, which would technically be a meeting of the planning board.
Yeah.
And that's how we would notice it, but it would be at a sidewalk.
I don't know, maybe it's how the board, who can attend, or whether or not we try to schedule that between meetings, between this and next month's meeting.
So that would have to be basically done by the end of next week.
Well, the sidewalk would just have to happen prior to your next meeting, which is May.
Actually, we have 5 weeks before the next meeting, so we would
so-
have 2 more weeks to get that in.
If you guys decide to vote to do a site walk, we would probably send out information tomorrow to get your availability and talk with the applicant and figure out a date as soon as possible.
Mike?
Sidewalk. It's up to you, but you could hold the sidewalk the same night as your next meeting. No, before the meeting, while daylight, unless you're thinking of a weekend or something different. But we also have to be here, so I need to know when that's going to be.
So if we were to ask staff to start that process as quickly as possible to get your availability and the best of our availabilities, that would be something we could accomplish before the next, so we could postpone this to a date certain pending a site walk. If that's what people want to do.
Unless there's past precedent for it, I'm not sure why we can't agree right now on the day we're gonna do the site walk. Just like if we were continuing this hearing, which we will be to a date certain, we'd say, well, we're gonna do the site walk on April 30th or whatever, and that's when we do it.
You can establish it right here if that's what you would like to do.
And quite frankly, that will keep us from having to do a notice again too, because again, just like this postponement, theoretically, people have been aware of this meeting as, not this postponement, but the previous item on the agenda. The notice has already been provided and you folks are giving notice and everything like that. So to Ed's point, if we can do that tonight, that's great.
Is anybody against that? I just want to make sure that we hear from everybody. Okay.
So it has to be at least 14 days from now. Well, yes, because they still have to send the public notice out.
We don't. If we make a decision tonight, if
If we
something
make
works
it in
for
the
you,
public
and works
sphere,
for the
okay.
applicant as well, then we make it known that it's, either before the meeting, as Mike suggested, or another date, it's whatever, the 17th at 3:00. That's it.
Okay. So Natalie, that's the 13th, right? May 13th?
Next month.
Our next meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
May 10th.
What
I
am
think
I
it's May
looking at?
13th.
Is it my brain might be just wrong.
I got the 13th.
Yeah.
Well, then that's the 13th.
Yes, it is the 13th.
I have no calendar in front of me for May, just April. Okay, so May 13th is your next meeting.
Okay, so just to be clear, so we would have to be postponing to next month. I would certainly need a motion for that.
Would we like to establish
Well,
when
and
the
the-
site walk
yeah.
will be?
And the sidewalk.
You could be postponing it, you could be deciding what your site walk is gonna be tonight, great. At that site walk, you end up postponing it to another night to do this again, unless you're gonna do that all on the 13th.
Can't make motions at a site walk. It's not a formal meeting, so you won't be able to have,
Thank you.
and some of you probably have not done a site walk before, but typically the way those work is the planning board can ask the applicant questions, and the applicant can answer them. Members of the public can be there. They are not allowed to talk to the planning board. Planning board is not allowed to talk to each other. So, and there should be someone taking notes to some degree that should be publicly
Yeah.
put out into the public after. So that's just a quick, it's typically in past situations where I've gone on site walks, not with this city, but with other municipalities, we've tried to limit the amount of talking that didn't have to do with specific site features.
Right.
Like things you're seeing right in the moment. So anything that would be answered better in a public forum, or to keep those questions and to ask them publicly.
I think the last one we did was the clay pit with Moran brick yard. Okay, I guess we're ready for a motion, if we're gonna do May 13th.
Are we going to have further discussion, or is this where this
If
topic
we
ends?
want further discussion, we can keep going.
Okay. I wanted to present a question to staff, which resonates with Ed's question regarding my concerns. I would request a review of section 60-1336, paragraph A, sentence 2. And I'll read it, and I'm going to ask for staff's interpretation and staff's applicability issues with this. Section 60-1336. As conditions prerequisite to the granting of any special exceptions, the board shall require evidence of the following. Now, I know this isn't a special exception, but sentence 2 states that the special exception sought will neither create nor aggravate a traffic hazard, a fire hazard, or any other safety hazard. Does staff consider that statement applicable to this application outside of it not being a special exception, which is the catch?
I would say that it's not applicable to this, but the standard under site division, one of the standards you're looking for, is the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site and in relation to adjacent areas adequately addressed. So there is a provision under what you are.
So we already have identified 2 provisions that allot for extenuating circumstances that could affect health and safety. Although we're missing the 3rd one, which is the clear black and white that I'm looking for. Putting my planning board hat on, I don't find that black and white. But putting my hat on of being very passionate on this topic, and I cannot overstate anhydrous ammonia that I know goes into safe handling, chlorine that I know goes into safe handling. We really need to make a good decision here. That's all I have to say.
So what do you need, Tim, then, to help you make a good decision?
I need the code to have that 3rd black and white, which it doesn't have. And unfortunately, our current Section 60 code, I'm having trouble finding that identifier that Ed also was inquiring staff about, but I did find something that's close. I just wanted to bring that up.
So one more, just to be clear, do we need to determine a date of a sidewalk before we make a motion to postpone, or could that happen subsequently?
It would be best if you did. If you're going to determine it tonight, it would be best to do it before you postpone the project, as you should not speak about the project again after it's been postponed.
Yeah. I guess I don't know how to.
Well, I'm not done. What are we getting out of the site walk?
I personally would like to see the site and be able to evaluate some of the concerns that the community members have, particularly around the proximity to the water, the light pollution, and the lack of buffer, as well as some of the traffic conditions.
And my only question with that is it going to give us any tangible evidence to, I guess, deny the project or something, or like that we can measure and actually use as a finding of fact to?
Well, we do have the ability to deny a project if it's going to be detrimental and create safety hazards to the public who are going to be residing there. And I think that a lot of the potential impacts from this are something that we should be evaluating based on the community concern. I'm not going out there specifically to look for a reason to deny it. But I think given the scale and scope of this project and the community concern and the fact that we've only had the application materials for about 5 days, I think that it bears further investigation.
Does that sound reasonable?
I mean, certainly it's up to the board if they want to do
Okay.
that. It's
I
not-
have similar concerns because I'm certainly not an engineer. So it does take me a little longer to digest some of this information.
It's to your point, maybe you're not looking for reasons to deny it, but you want to find the certainty to be able to approve it. Because if there are reasons to deny it, certainly the board needs to make that clear, as part of their findings. And if it is that to that point, in an ideal world, the board never denies a project unless the applicant just can't meet those criteria. So maybe a site visit helps out the board and also helps out the applicant to know that, hey, maybe we're hearing some other concerns there, and maybe there is a compromise that can be met out there that isn't otherwise required by the code, but is still something that can be met that maybe addresses some of those concerns. So at the end of the day, it's up to you folks if you want to do the site visit.
Does that work? Good. Thank you, Maureen, for clarifying that and making the public aware of what our concerns are.
So I guess regarding having a site walk, we need to know Mr. Gatto's availability as far as if, before a month before next month's meeting would work, or if there's what works best for you, because we'll need you to be there.
It is a little bit of a drive from Ocala, Florida. Someday I'm going to retire. I'm here through the 19th of April. I have commitments next week, but I have some dates that the 14th during the day. I don't know if you're thinking evening. What time of day are you thinking?
I think most people would probably be evening. I don't know what. Speaking for me, it would probably have to be in the evening.
14th, I got a planning board meeting in Lewiston. So that would leave really the 15th or the 18th, which is Tuesday is the 15th, or the 18th, which is Friday. I'm also back for a few days at the end of April. April 28th on Monday or April 29th on Tuesday.
So you had suggested the day of the meeting. Is that?
I had suggested the day of the meeting, and that if I'm going to come to the meeting, I'm going to be here.
It's same with me. Like, I have another job, so
Yeah.
if I can just.
But then you'd
get
be
it all
meeting in
one
the
day.
afternoon or something, right? Because you meet here at
It'd have
6.
to be probably 3:30 or something to
4
get
o'clock
enough
or
time
something,
to
yep.
get over there. And back over.
That is the best day for me, is the
Okay.
meeting of the meeting. So I'm going to fly in for the meeting anyways.
Does that work for the board?
Unfortunately.
Oh, I was just laughing at the flowers.
We don't want to keep Mike from Ocala.
No, it's,
I'm just kidding.
that's what you get when you work.
Yes.
Does
that work for everybody?
4 o'clock on the day of the meeting, is that what we're proposing?
And that would give us an hour and 15 minutes or an hour. It's only
Okay.
not even 10 minutes from here.
So I don't want to,
I personally, I prefer in the evening because I get out of work at 5. So.
Yep.
And my job is not really flexible because we're in session right now, so I'll just put that out there.
is there anything specifically I need to identify on the site for you? It's all wooded right now, so we are going to have the cutting limits flagged, so I will be able to take you around where we intend to cut, I hope.
So.
Yep.
long
Michael says
pants-
yes.
Long pants and boots.
Well, I don't know if, we're not going to, well, we can walk through the wetlands if you want, yes.
I'd like to see where how do you keep this thing on? Can you keep it on?
Yeah, you just got to hold it. You have to hold it.
Anyway,
These two are open.
I'd like to know the outer limits of the road where it intersects with Brickyard Circle.
Yeah, that's the side, that's the, where we're gonna walk in. That's, you're gonna park on Brickyard Circle by the bridge and.
But
the
you're,
only-
but you're moving the road.
We're moving it 20 feet. So if we're gonna do that in the cunning limits, I can walk you through the sites, and with the contour map, we can tell you generally where we are. So we can give you an idea of what's going on. If that works for you.
Join us when you can. Join us when you can.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Fine. You got this? Are we done?
Yeah, I was also gonna say, if you have any questions that you wanted us to ask when we went to the sidewalk, you could email it to, yep. If that's it, then I would make a motion to postpone to a date certain of May 13th, following a site walk that is open to the public at 4 o'clock at the proposed address.
Location off Brickyard Circle.
Location off of Brickyard Circle. I don't know what other details we need to inform the public of.
Just at 4 o'clock, right?
4 o'clock off of Brickyard Circle. I guess that's my motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries.
So what we'll do for that meeting, I mean, Natalie did a great job of summarizing that, but we can like summarize in advance again, kind of what the rules of engagement are for a site walk, just so we don't get ourselves in trouble out there, either amongst ourselves or with any of the public that might attend.
Very good call.
Okay, item 5 on the agenda, this is a public hearing and site plan review of 65 Washington Street North. Application was submitted by Teradyne Consultants, LLC. We'll have staff take it from there. We'll give you a chance to get settled.
I'm here.
What do we do with it?
So the applicant is proposing at the site at 65 Washington Street North there's an existing building there. They're looking to renovate the building for multi-use, including storage, office space, and a cannabis retail location. This is also within the T 5.1 neighborhood district. Our biggest thing to point out about this project is that although it meets zoning standards, it is missing a requirement for a licensing standard, which is a 750-foot setback from a pre-existing school. So less than 750 street up the road is the Spurwink Day Treatment Program located on Sacred Heart Place, which is at the church. It's on the same property as the church that's right up the road. We have reached out to the school, we have reached out to the Department of Education, and it is a special purpose private school. And the applicant is requesting a waiver from this setback. Unfortunately, it's not within the purview of the planning board to request such a waiver, to grant or even review such a waiver. So I have written into your staff reports tonight just a statement. We've checked with the city clerk, and this would be the best way to approach this, that you acknowledge the waiver's been requested, but unfortunately it's out of your jurisdiction. And overall, staff is recommending that we deny this project tonight. And I have written out into your staff report the, like, reasons you're allowed to deny a project. And in particular, the reason that we are choosing tonight is the proposed development violates provisions of the zoning ordinance applicable to the site or other applicable laws, regulations, or ordinances, which would be licensing standards, which is in our city ordinances, but not our zoning ordinance, would be applicable there. My summary.
Does the board have any questions for staff?
So what's your basis for saying that there's a school within 750 feet? I say that I've read Mr. Condon's rather flippant letter, but, I mean, he does point out that he doesn't believe, essentially, that there is a school at that location.
We've reached out to the Department of Education, and they have verified there's a school at that location. If you look at the definition of schools in our ordinance and like what qualifies these special purpose private schools, although they may not serve as many children as traditional schools, they do classify under that definition.
And is it actually there?
It is actually there. We've verified. It used to be the Renaissance School run by St. Mary's, and they switched ownership, and there was a very, very short period between those two schools, so.
Any other questions? Should we have the developer come up?
Yeah.
Does the developer want to speak?
Yes.
So, my name is Craig Suit with Teradyne. Happy to talk about anything on the site plan, but I think it's going to go more to the discussion of the 750 in the school. One thing we would request the board to consider is approving it with conditions that they'd have to meet the licensing standard to let the applicant go through that process, which as my understanding outlines any necessary appeals, which would be possible should it be denied. And if it gets denied here, it ends up, the only appeal is Superior Court instead of City Council. So if it gets approved, if it's approved with conditions, although from my understanding of the letter is the board can't waive or weigh in on Chapter 14, the licensing process would be able to, and should it be denied there, it would be, the approval here would be inherently invalid with that condition. So I would just ask that the board at least consider that while they review, to allow the applicant to go through the submission process for the licensing on that end, and any necessary thing that would result from there. And then Frank Perini, the applicant, is here, and I know he wanted to speak as well. Thank you.
First of all, I know it's been a long night, so I appreciate your time. I'll try to make this short. Give you a little background. My name is Frank Bernie. I currently own 9 cannabis stores. I have in Waterville, Gardner, Wilton, Bangor, Alfred, Reedfield. Anyway, I have a bunch of them, so I'm familiar with some of the process. I'm actually kind of stumped on why we're here. I came to Auburn looking to open a cannabis shop. I did the proper due diligence that you're supposed to do. The first thing you do is you identify properties. I identify properties, contacted the code office. The code office is like, this one doesn't work, this doesn't work, et cetera. I finally identified 65 North. I called the code office. He goes, yes, that's in the right zone. There are no schools, there's no churches, you're good to go. He goes, we need to set a meeting up so we can come in and look at it. So I did that. I waited like 2 weeks. No other town I've actually had to sit down with them to do this, but he pulled up his little computer and he's like, there's nothing in the area, you're good to go. And I said, so can I go get the lease? He's like, yes, let's get this, you can get the process started. At that point, I went in and I hired these guys. Obviously, they're not very cheap, okay? I had to hire them to start the progress because your city, which I'm fine with, you have to hire a certain bunch of people. You got a list that you can go with. You can't just do it yourself. Some cities you can, some cities you can't. It's all different. So we did that. They were doing the process for like 4 weeks before somebody notified me a week before the planning board meeting said, we missed the school.
Now, I'm trying to be very respectful here and not be mean because I don't want to piss the code officer off. I want to work in the city of Auburn. I'd like to get a thing going. How do you miss a school? Nobody can still tell me that. You have a little diagram, you have a list of schools. It's like, how do you miss a school if it is licensed and it's supposed to be? I've been asking that question since they told me that. It's not like it was like the next day, it's like, hey, we missed this. She mentioned something about, and I've already talked to the state, talked to attorneys, I've already talked to people about all kinds of other avenues. You said a brief period. Is there a brief period that they weren't active? If that's the case, and we got our application, and every other city in the state would be like, you're okay. If they weren't active at that time, one of two things happened. One, complete negligence. I'm not trying to be mean, but that is just a ridiculous mistake. That is negligent to miss a school. That's the job. The job is to tell us whether we can do it or not. Okay? Or two, I don't even want to say anything else, but it's how do you miss that? I just can't get that. Or the procedure, your process of identifying school, there's a flaw in the system. Again, I'm not saying anything bad. This is cannabis. Certain cities have had issues with these things, and they usually rectify them. I'm at the point here now where, what do? I took out a $500,000 lease based on go do it, okay? After going through all the due diligence that I'm supposed to do, and then I go there and I hear a week before, you can't do it because we missed something. So I'm wondering, first of all, what happened? How did that happen, okay? Or am I okay? We do meet the state, okay? There are two ways this goes. One, the city of Auburn is business friendly and they want to work with somebody. They made it, somehow the mistake was not, I did everything I was supposed to do. On their end, can we work with this guy to get this approved somehow? Or two, screw you, we don't care what happened, you're not getting it. And there's usually one of two ways for that. One, they're not business friendly, or they don't want it, or two, corruption. I don't think that's the case, but there's a lot of small corruption in Maine, and I've dealt with it already. So anyway, what happened? We meet the state setbacks, just, we can't. We already talked about how we can do the property so that we can hit the 500 with the state. There's got to be a provision so you can do some type of waiver. Maybe not this level, maybe it takes a month. Waterville had a problem where they did a school, cannabis shop where they made a safe zone after the applicant put in the application. They wouldn't change the ordinance so that accepted that, so that way they weren't open to liability, obviously, but also because that's what they do. With business friendly, they did the right thing. So I'm just asking you guys, is there anything we can do to figure out? First of all, I still don't know how this happened. I'd love to know, how do you miss a school? You know what I mean? And it's not like, I'm not trying to belittle Spurwick, okay? I know they do good. I've talked to DHS. I have family members that work with them. It's not like Edward Little or it's a program of like 15 people that are, in the thing is what I understand. We tried to call them, you can't even get a hold of them. I know, like you said, it was one thing that changed ownership. Anyway, I apologize if I seem a little aggressive, but obviously I've been tied up in this for like 5 months now. I already expected to be open. I've got 5 other projects in a way. This is what I do, is I open these stores. I'm not a cannabis user, so I'm not one of these advocates. I'm just opening businesses, and you can check with the state. We have a great reputation. We do everything we're supposed to. We follow the code and the laws to a T, and that's what I did here. And now I'm told after 4 weeks, he's already got the application done. We're already on the meeting. We get a phone call. How does that happen? I just don't get it. And if there's a mistake, fine. I just want to. I don't want to eat this $500,000 lease. And now I've heard somebody tell me, and I'm sure you guys say, well, why'd you get the lease? You can't move forward without the lease. So you always go to the city first to say, is it okay? Then you secure the lease. Then somebody says, well, why didn't you get a waiver out? Because it was a great deal. And I had 2 guys begging at it. So I actually offered more to get the lease. That's what you do when you got a good business deal. You jump on it. You jump on it with the due diligence that you made sure your thing was set. What better due diligence than sitting in a chair with the code officer going, you're good to go. There's nothing here.
Can we wrap this up? Yeah, we understand.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sounds like you have good reasons to be upset about that. That is a lot of money to invest. So.
And I'm going to apologize again.
Yeah.
I don't mean to become aggressive.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find a solution that doesn't get blown out of proportion. Because obviously, I just can't say forget it and walk away now. I'm on a hook for $500,000. Not to mention the amount of profits I'm going to lose for not being open.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thank you for your time.
You bet. Okay, so it's time for public comment.
Second.
All those
Make a motion to open for public comment.
Second.
All those in favor? Would any members of the public wish to speak? Seeing none, motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Any questions for staff or comments or what have you?
I have one question for staff. How long has the Spurwink Day Treatment Program been in continuous operation at 15 Sacred Heart Place?
And speaking with the superintendent, they assumed operations on August 26, 2024. Yes. It sounds like it was affiliated with St. Mary's, and St. Mary's, whatever, stopped their relationship on a Friday, and Monday, Spurwink took it over.
I can only assume it's probably difficult to identify smaller private schools when you're a municipality more familiar with your major public schools.
No doubt, he's. I mean, we don't want to be wrong. That's not our goal, right? To advise them. So, right now they only have 18 kids there. They're hoping to consolidate some of their services and have as many as 50 kids there possibly next year.
Question? Yeah, go ahead. So what ordinance or what provision of our ordinance, anything that we have jurisdiction over, refers to this 750-foot set?
Nothing. There's nothing in our zoning ordinance that references the 750. And there was a recommendation from the applicant that if you wanted to approve it, you could put a condition that they have to get their licensing. That's a route you could choose to take. There's also a route you can choose to take to deny the project. That is within the rights to denial. So that would be however the board chooses to vote.
So the standard of 750 feet is in a state regulation, a state license?
It's a city, it's city ordinance, but not zoning ordinance.
Okay. And are there provisions, if you know, in that ordinance for either a variance, and presumably it could be amended as well?
There's nothing for variances, but there is an appeal process if you apply for the license and get denied. That's external. It's not the Board of Appeals. It's something different specifically for getting denied licenses.
And just to change tact for a moment, is there anything about the site plan aspects of this application that you have questions about, or did you not examine it?
Nope, they actually do meet all of the site land, yep. Their site plan is all zoning ordinance wise. They are all set. They've met every applicable zoning ordinance.
You mentioned an amendment, and again, that amendment maybe could happen, but it's not a zoning and land use ordinance. It's
right.
A licensing requirement.
And you probably can see where I'm going. I'm inclined to have the board review the application as we would any other application, and if there's some ordinance that's not within our jurisdiction that prevents the ultimate use of the property, I don't think we will have wasted a lot of time. It doesn't appear to be a controversial thing that would be dragged out for many months. So I would be inclined to not deny the application unless we have reasons from a zoning or site plan perspective to deny it.
And you'll notice in your staff reports, I did go through every one of the zoning regulations that is applicable to the project and showed either how they met it or how they weren't changing anything from the existing features. So if you chose to go forward with an approval tonight, you should have all the information you need.
Natalie, can you go over again, at the very beginning of this topic, you mentioned that it's out of our jurisdiction?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Could you please
There is
qualify that?
Yes, you should absolutely make the comment tonight on the waiver request. So there is a waiver request from the applicant in their materials. They're specifically asking for a waiver from that 750-foot setback. That is not in the zoning ordinance, and there's nothing in there allowing a waiver that the planning board would grant. The letter in particular is from their attorney, and they are bringing up two main arguments, which really have to do with state law compliance, which the state law only requires a 500-foot setback, and this school is a 500-foot, but again, you guys don't have the jurisdiction to review a waiver of such requests. And the other thing comes down to a 750 feet distance when you're measuring from door to door, which the ordinance specifies only matters when you're in a commercial subdivision, which this is not that either.
We're talking property line to property line then?
We're talking property line to property line. And so I'm asking, and in your staff reports, I've written out just an acknowledgement of the waiver request that the applicants proposed, and just stating that it's out of the scope of your jurisdiction. And we've talked to the city clerk, and we both agreed this was the best way forward, just so that everything's on the record, that you guys have at least, everything's in the record, that it's been acknowledged, and you just, yeah.
The code officer held in the beginning is the one who suggested the waiver. I didn't come up with that out of thin air. He said he could request a waiver for it. I think it was John. And then he actually talked, my attorney mentioned it to Craig here.
Okay, that's good.
Just so you know, we didn't.
Thank you. So has there been an application for a business license? Yeah.
They can't do that until they get through this process.
Correct. So we don't really know what kind of a business it is yet?
It's going to be, there's going to be
Well,
medical cannabis in the 800 square foot, and then there's going to be some storage and office buildings for their kind of whole
I mean,
business.
you know, but
I described it in the letter what's going to be there. So there was information provided on what's going to be in the building for that.
I'm just on Ed's page with, we don't really have
We don't have the authority to approve.
the authority to not approve it, right?
Yes, I guess I have a question about the suggested motion then, because it says that it doesn't meet the requirements of section 60, 1277 and 60, 1336. But are those related to the permitting of it, or is it because then it says later the fails to comply with the 750-foot school setback?
So, in the ordinance, you have a couple different sections. One of them is like what what the planning board is making findings on, in particular to site plans and to special exceptions. In that same section, there is a clause that says these are the reasons you can deny a project.
Okay, so that's why I was citing the sections, even though it's, okay, that's what I was wondering.
So you can deny a project based off of, and as I wrote out, the proposed and other applicable laws, regulations, or ordinances. So there is a provision that would allow you to deny it if you so chose.
That's what I was wondering, what sections were being referenced if it wasn't part of the licensing.
Based on the intent of the use of the property.
Yes. But I also have a draft staff report that you guys haven't seen that has a motion that does address a condition if you wanted to go that route, if you wanted to go approval, that I could put up on the board.
I guess I'd like to see that, because I think now that we're knowledgeable of another ordinance, that we take an oath to uphold other ordinances of the city, the state, and the country. Since we've been made aware of this other ordinance, I think we have to recognize it, and we still have to comply with it, but because it doesn't necessarily fall under our direct jurisdiction, then at least we should allow the process to follow through for this party to have to get the appropriate license through whatever group that would be.
Yeah, but I agree with Bob. We're kind of ignoring the elephant in the room. At the end of the day, the two property lines are within that 750-foot separation as established by city ordinance. That's kind of where our responsibility ends, from my perspective.
No, we have to uphold state ordinances too. That's part of that oath we take when we do when you get signed in. But we saw last month, you have to also adhere by state ordinances and federal ordinances to
Well, I understand that, but I have an ordinance right here telling us that it's in breach of that ordinance. So I don't understand what the correct direction would be.
It's not in breach of the ordinance. It's a section of the ordinance we could use to say that we are denying it because it won't get its license. But as brought up earlier, we're not in the business of licensing the business. We have to cite something in our, that site is how we could deny it based on it not being able to get a license, but it's not saying this doesn't meet special exception review.
Yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying. Yep.
It strikes me that if we were to approve this application with the condition that the applicant shall receive all proper permitting from the city and state to any retail operation beginning, and perhaps that could read cannabis retail operation.
Yeah, we can.
I think that we would be, and your point's acknowledged, I think we still would be, it would be consistent, your point, our obligations to uphold the law. We're not giving him our approval because we don't have the authority to give him such approval. But if he can convince some other authority to change that provision of the ordinance or somehow otherwise gain their approval, then he's done everything he needs to do. And if he can't, then our approval is for naught.
So what would be the logical next step for us to allow Mr. Barani to continue in that process where it comes back to us?
Well, it wouldn't come back to us because what we'd be doing is we'd be allowing them to build as long as he gets a license. So he wouldn't be able to build until he got a license. If he can get the license, he can build, so it wouldn't come back to us at all.
I can't read that, so I'll wait for somebody to.
I don't think I can make it much bigger, I'm sorry.
Are there any more questions or comments? Okay, so we're ready for a motion? I am. I will ask for one then.
I got eagle eyes.
Wait, before you do that, can we just do the statement about the waiver?
Please.
Sorry.
You want one of us to recite that?
I do. Oh, I can, I guess, if
It's preferred.
It's preferred
it's
that a board
preferred if
member?
one of you do it, yes.
All right, I'll do it. The planning board acknowledges the applicant's request for a waiver from the 750-foot separation requirement between marijuana establishments and pre-existing schools. However, this requirement is established under section 14-659, paragraph 3 of city ordinance, which states that marijuana businesses must be located at least 700 feet from property line of any pre-existing public or private school serving grades K through 12. This section does not provide the planning board with any authority to waive or modify this standard. Therefore, the board cannot take action on the waiver request as it lies outside the scope of our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
I believe you said 700 foot.
750.
Oh, I thought I heard him say 700, that's why. That's all right.
750.
So you're looking for a motion now? I make a motion that the proposal meets the requirements of section 60-1277 and 60-1336 and approve the site plan by Teradyne Consultants LLC on behalf of Frank Barranio, for the reuse of the existing commercial building located at 65 Washington Street North, also identified as the city assessor parcel ID 220-085. The applicant intends to utilize the property for a multi-use site that includes a storage, office space, and a cannabis retail location. The site is currently developed and has no changes to the existing building footprint are proposed. The proposed project has met the standards pursuant to Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 2, Site Plan Review, and Division 3, Special Exemption with the following conditions. No development activity until any bonding or inspection fees are determined by the Auburn Engineering Department. B, blasting permit in advance of blasting from the City of Auburn Planning, Permitting, and Code Department. And C, that the applicant shall receive all proper permitting from the city and state prior to any retail cannabis operation beginning.
All those in favor? Oh, any discussion, sorry. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries unanimously. That's only 8 o'clock, right? Okay. Item 6 is a workshop. The planning board asked for time to discuss the formation of a subcommittee focused on reviewing and developing planning board policies and procedures. I did speak with Stacy about this, and she was okay with us not talking about it, but didn't offer an opinion either way. So I probably would, well, let's talk about it and figure out what to deal with after that.
So at the last meeting, the chair had put forth an effort to try to establish a subcommittee that would look at the policies and procedures. And due to some absences on the board, it was asked to be postponed to this meeting so you could determine who wanted to sit on said subcommittee. I remember that Stacy and Maureen had both volunteered, and they were just interested if anyone else would be interested in sitting on that as well. And if you are, then we'll, as staff and members of the subcommittee, will figure out a time that we can get you guys set up with a.
And I think we had said 3 would be a good number, right?
3 would be a good
To be
number.
a comfortable conversation.
Well, I reviewed those minutes. I watched the entire meeting, and I see where the gentleman to my right half volunteered me for the position. And I'll volunteer my other half. I'd be happy to be on them.
Okay. Do we have to?
I don't
Make a
think
motion,
so.
okay.
Because the chair is the one who creates the subcommittee. It doesn't have to be a motion of the board or anything.
Okay.
So we'll reach out to you two and Stacy Afar and figure out a time where we can meet. And we will publicly notice that for anybody. So if you're looking to watch a meeting about policy and procedure at the planning board, you just watch out when it's coming.
I think it's a great idea because like several years ago we spent a good portion of one of our meetings going over the policies and procedures. So it'd be a good idea to have ideas ahead of time as to what, if any, changes are needed.
Yeah, we spent so much time and ended up just ending it and not doing anything. Okay,
Okay.
let's move on. Item 8 is miscellaneous.
You have a public comment session.
We have a public comment that I forgot to put in my notes. Got it. Okay. I will open it up for public comment.
Mr. Beal, Mr. Cleveland?
Okay. As no one wants to speak, we'll close public comment.
Okay, so for miscellaneous tonight, we have, well, first, upcoming agenda items. As you know, you'll be seeing the Danville Corner project coming back, and you'll also be seeing the Brickyard project coming back. I don't believe I've received anything else that is coming in time for the planning board. So I believe those are going to be the only 2 substantive projects on your thing next month. And then the other thing under miscellaneous was last meeting, you were shown the capital improvement plan by the city manager, and you were supposed to be given an opportunity to make any comments at tonight's meeting that you would like to go back to the city manager or city council. So this is an opportunity to speak on that if you'd like.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Kroll does a pretty thorough job and answered quite a few questions at the time, so I don't have anything for him.
I think my only question would be if there have been any changes, just based on any federal funding and any reallocation that may have happened at the federal level, and if there has been any impact to the city's plans based on that.
Some time ago, and it's maybe still dangling out there, but Connex boxes, is that coming back to us?
That was table, not postponed, I don't, the city council took some action to look at that at a future meeting, and it has not come back to them yet, so it will come back eventually.
I actually did have a CIP question. If city council or city manager could offer a little more information on the $250,000 dog park. I'm curious about that expense line item. It better be an awesome dog park. I just saw that line item and I gulped, and I'm just kind of curious as to what constitutes a $250,000 dog park and if that's a great use of taxpayer money.
Dog wash, nail trimming. Come on.
Sounds like a cat lover up there, I don't
No,
know.
no, I have a dog, don't get me wrong, but I'm also trying to be fiscally responsible. I'm like, yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, so.
Okay, are we done with the work, CIP questions? Okay, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor? We're adjourned.